Hi. Okay, so we're going to talk about this, and it's like a very long topic, so I'll just introduce it. Um, okay. Have you heard of the term psychic attack? I don't know when I first started using it, and I don't really remember when I first started noticing it, but when my intuition became extremely strong to the point where I was just always in my intuition all the time, what I found was I could notice psychic attack very easily. Psychic attack happens through the mind. So when you're in your mind, if you're thinking all the time, it's very easy to psychically attack you because your channel is open to be attacked. When you're in your intuition, it's a completely different kind of opening. And therefore, it's really hard to attack you because you're not really creating the opportunity for the attack to occur. So psychic attack can actually happen in many different kinds of ways. I had just said that it happens through the mind. That is, let's say, one of the primary ways. But it also can happen through your emotions, and it can also happen physically, like it can cause you to have an accident that harms you bodily. But for the most part, I would say that most psychic attack happens through the mind. And what does that look like? Well, like I said, this is a very big topic that we could probably speak about for 5 hours. We have to understand what entities are. We also have to understand nature as like I see it. So humans actually are a food source for negative beings. Some people even think that humans were created by negative things to be the food source, just like we might have chickens or sheep or goats in order to use them for our purposes. We use what they do, like in the yard, and we also eat their bodies when we feel like it. Some people believe that humans are the prey species. We're often taught that humans are the apex predators of the world. And, especially people who are worried about, what's happening to the planet in quotation marks, they look at humans as like this big bad wolf, you know. The thing is, oftentimes what's happening is a little bit out of our control, a little bit. How it is in our control is we're not waking up when we could. How it's out of our control is as long as you're asleep, a lot of negative things are happening in a way that you're not aware of. So psychic attack happens even when you're young. The entities in your parents can psychically attack you, and therefore you start to feel unsafe, you start to feel unloved, and you start to develop an ego when you're really, really young in order to feel safe with your parents. So, if your parents are Amish and let's say you're a little bit more open-minded than that, naturally, if you start to question or say things that threaten the ego of your parents, your Amish parents might psychically attack you so that you start to, on your own, feel as if it is dangerous to tread those waters. So then your ego grows up thinking, I'm strongly Amish, right? Not because that's necessarily your belief system per se. It's not like your soul's calling or anything, but it's your way of keeping safe with your parents. So psychic attack is like kind of like all the time, you know? Entities have a stronghold over technology and minds, like I said. So big cities have way more entities and you're way more psychically attacked in big cities. So a city like New York City, London is like psychic attack central. I don't know anyone who gains energy by living in New York City. And if they do, they're probably entitized and or definitely a non-real person. Most people who are sensitive to energy, most people who are, let's say, open, you could say like that, most people who I believe probably have a spiritual mission that requires them to reach the spiritual level of being would feel very drained by New York City. So someone who thrives in New York City is much more on the material plane, and spirituality probably isn't that important to them. They don't feel their entities and they don't care, you know. So people who are non-real people can be very dangerous because while they're kind of ignorant, they are vessels for entities. And if you are one real person surrounded by a bunch of non-real people, all of them can turn in an instant and psychically attack you because an entity can enter them, or their own entities that they already have can bother you, or the entities that you have as a real person will enter the non-real person and bother you. So again, human beings are food for entities. Whether or not you want to think of this as humans are the prey species and entities are the predators feeding upon us, that's up to your personal belief system and what you believe reality is. But for sure, humans are preyed upon and parasited upon, that is without a doubt. Whether or not that makes you a certain way, you know, that's a whole other thing. Psychic attack basically keeps you in your mind. It makes you confused and makes you dumber than you really are. It shuts you off from your intuition, and it shuts you off from any kind of spiritual intelligence. So when you're under psychic attack, you might suddenly feel scared. You might suddenly feel unsafe. You might suddenly feel really, really bad. And the primary psychic attack that you, the real you that I'm talking to right now, probably feel all the time, more than all the other psychic attacks that you feel maybe on a day-to-day basis, is the old feeling you've had since childhood that makes you feel bad. And for most people, it is shame. For some people, it is guilt. You may not associate how you feel with the words I just said, but how you feel can be reduced to those feelings. And a lot of times you go up into your mind in order to not feel those feelings in your body and to have some sort of feeling of control over the situation. But what you're actually doing is allowing the psychic attack to psychically attack you further. You are aiding and abetting psychic attack by being in your mind. Do you have questions so far? So a long time ago, I was traveling with someone and she was starting to learn what psychic attack was. And especially because I can see psychic attack, I would point it out to her. And she had worked on herself enough that if I told her, okay, you're under psychic attack right now, she'd be like, okay. And she'd like do something about it. One time we were in a new country that neither of us had been to before, and she was trying to use her card at the ATM to withdraw cash, and it failed. So she had no cash when she really wanted cash, and this was enough to psychically attack her. So like I said, entities have a stronghold over minds and technology. So it's really easy for entities to mess up your ATM thing. So when she turned around from the ATM and looked at me, her face looked different. You know, she had a bad look on her face. And usually when people are under psychic attack, their face twists and they turn ugly. Their eyes might get really, really dark also. And she just had a weird look on her face. And some people, when they're under psychic attack, they might start to panic. Certainly they don't feel safe. And, you know, if she was in a really high stable vibration, if the card doesn't work at the ATM, you're like, oh, that sucks. You know, you just go to a different ATM, right? But for her, that was enough, right? So she had very low tolerance for psychic attack. She was easily psychically attacked. And this is the primary reason why one would want to raise one's vibration is to make it harder to bring you down through psychic attack. Like the psychic attack would have to be really big to bring you down. Whereas most people, they have no presence. You know, they literally have no presence. They're not present to themselves. they're distracted, their minds are easily hijacked, and therefore, and they're used to feeling really bad feelings all the time, like I'm not good enough, they don't like me, I did that wrong, I don't want to make her upset, behaviors that reflect the belief system that she's more important than me, other things that are like one step removed from this, like, well, I'm the hero of the family, I'm the hero of the company. So even if they misuse me, abuse me, and do not hold me in high esteem, I'm still going to be the cog in the machine that keeps this dysfunctional system running because I have an ego and I like to be the hero. So there's many things that keep people so low in consciousness level, in self-regard. They have so little discipline that they can be like easily psychically attacked, And in this case, I told this woman, okay, you're under psychic attack. And this is the thing, she believed me, because when you're under psychic attack, unless you're highly aware, you won't know. You're actually going to think it's your real experience. And oftentimes, if the psychic attack involves chaos, you're just going to blame the other person, So you can imagine if this girl had really, really, really low consciousness, and I'm like, you're under psychic attack. No, I'm not. She wouldn't believe me and like double down harder in believing that her psychic attack is her reality. And I see this as really low consciousness people. They have no intuition, but they think they do, which is really dangerous. And then they'll, under psychic attack, believe that they're having an intuition and argue with you. And they'll argue that this is the right way, that you're wrong, that you're trying to, you're evil, they're good, this kind of bad, good mentality where you're the bad guy when you know the truth, So I often see psychic attack cause people to really go away from their spiritual paths and ruin their healing journeys because they feel so bad while healing, because the healing and the going up in vibration causes your entities to stir up and they don't want to leave your body. And so they start to psychically attack you to make you easier to handle. It's like beating up the prisoner so that he won't complain so much and is more obedient. That's what psychic attack is. So back to this woman, ATM lady. The good thing is she believed me, even though she didn't feel it in her body and she didn't recognize it herself. The good thing was she believed me. And one thing that can really help you out of psychic attack is trusting other people who actually are trustworthy and can help you out of psychic attack. She had to go somewhere, be by herself for a really long time. It took her like 2 hours to come out of the psychic attack. She had to ground herself, have bare feet, etc. That's not necessarily how you come out of psychic attack. How you come out of psychic attack varies. But that's what this woman did. And after 2 hours, she was herself again. So what happened, for 2 hours, her life force energy was hijacked. She wasn't herself. She was a victim. She was feeling really unsafe and weird. The thing about psychic attack is you're going to feel weird. And it doesn't have to be triggered by anything. Like the ATM examples, it was triggered by a real life happenstance, like a booby trap that the entities, set for her. And this can happen when you're trying to make a large purchase and it doesn't go through, or you message someone and it doesn't go through. Or have you ever left a voicemail for someone and it was completely garbled and they couldn't hear any of it? Probably that was some form of psychic attack. Oftentimes, especially because you know what's going on with money going online, right? So like when money's online, how easy is it to psychically attack you through technology? Money, financial psychic attack is quite common. The whole financial industry is built on this. Debt, credit cards, is built on just mining shame from people, So, if something happens and somehow $300 is missing from your bank account and there's no way you can prove it, and there's no way you can do anything about it, that was definitely a financial psychic attack. And it definitely hurt you in the way of, like shame. Am I safe? Can I take care of myself in the material world? This kind of thing. So this woman definitely felt weird. And probably what was happening was like this panic and this shame. And so what it did was it converted her life force energy into food that entities could eat. And entities have to do this to you because they can't just eat you as is. They have to convert your energy into something that they can eat. And what they'll convert it to is primarily shame and guilt, which aren't even real emotions in my opinion, but I won't really go into that right now. Fear, anger. What's the other one? Fear, anger, sadness. So if you feel shame and guilt, which are not real emotions, but are manufactured, social feelings. Anyway, shame and guilt, if you feel shame and guilt, for sure you're under psychic attack. Fear, anger, and sadness, those are real feelings, and sometimes they can help you. Like if you're angry about something, it's probably because your boundaries were violated. So feeling your anger is good, and expressing your anger is good, and taking care of your boundaries is good. But kind of being like stuck in the anger, right, where it's just being like revved up over and over and over again. A lot of people unconsciously do this. They help the entities by having, like addictions to things like alcohol, which are shame and anger. So when you're drinking too much alcohol, the entities can kind of overtake you, and you're just like rolling in shame and anger. Like you're just like a shame and anger factory for as long as you're drunk, and the entities can eat off of you. So as you can see, the less conscious you are, the more easy you are to manipulate on a etheric or energetic level, the more the entities can feed off of you. And if they're successful, you're going to end up with some sort of really bad disease. You're probably going to have a difficulty in life, like your car breaks down and you can't pay for it to get repaired, so you don't know how to get to work. The same week your girlfriend breaks up with you. This kind of thing where you can't seem to get a leg up in life. You're kind of underperforming. And because non-real people don't have that much life force energy, entities will live in them, but they're kind of using them as pawns for you, the king or the queen. So they're kind of using the non-real humans to circulate around you, get close to you through social relationships. And because you think, oh, that's my sister, or that's my best friend, or whatever, or that's my client, I don't want to let them down. I don't want them to feel bad. You're going to change your behavior in a way that is not good for you or your boundaries, and allow that pawn, that non-real human, either their entities or your entities that you have in your own physical body, will work in tandem with those other non-real human people's entities. And it's like a tag team. Then it's really, really hard to resist that, because there's like so many entities on you, you're going to be brought down. So, a lot of people tolerate abuse. Sometimes you're in your 40s and you still have a relationship with your mom because you never healed from her abuse when you were younger. You're still seeking her love and approval, and she won't give it to you. And you're still acting like a little kid around your mom, even though you're in your 40s. So these relationships are a big opening for people. And when you don't heal from your trauma, you can't do anything about this. You're like almost addicted to the abusive relationship, So sometimes people have abusive relationships with their workplace. Sometimes they're like in the wrong career, and they can tell maybe they're a little bit awake, so they can tell like something's not right with my career. Like everyone seems to be a non-real person, but I don't know what non-real people are. So all I know is I feel a little bit uncomfortable or weird, but I'm not committed to my healing or spiritual path. So I'm not going to follow that in order to find my true self and, leave my career and all this kind of stuff. Like people just kind of stay uncomfortable, kind of like for the rest of their lives. And something I said in another video is a real person can over time become a non-real person. And this is because the entity takes up more and more and more space in your body, and you start to become more entity than human. And then these people are completely out of control. So you probably know people who are like really, really old, whose egos are so set, you can't argue with them, they're set in their ways, and you leave them alone because they're old. That process starts happening way earlier, and I do notice that there's some sort of threshold. Like if you haven't really severely started working on this early enough, the entities are going to have such a strong hold over you that it's going to be really, really hard to overcome the situation. So, what is psychic attack? It's basically how the world works. The world runs on psychic attack. you know, women are exposed to images that make them feel bad about themselves and make them think that they should be something other than their true selves, and make them obsessed with things that are materialistic and have nothing to do with their spiritual missions. Like, you can imagine a lot of the beauty industry and the fashion industry is based on psychic attack and makes money off of psychic attack, So the world kind of runs off of psychic attack. And like I said previously, the financial industry, like credit cards, that's all psychic attack, right? So there's this feeling of being disempowered. There's a feeling of being gaslighted into feeling a reality that's not your true reality. And so recently I was talking to someone who was completely under psychic attack. And I'm like, you're under psychic attack right now. And they wouldn't believe me. So that was bad. And started to double down on their feeling, no, this is true, and what they were thinking or saying was like really bad for them. But they're like, it's my intuition. I feel it in my bones, and they're like belligerent and angry. And so the more you talk to someone under psychic attack, like you don't get anywhere. And this feeling, it's like the more you try and talk it out or whatever, sometimes there's a lot of psychic attack between you and someone you love, because entities love to break bonds and break trust between human beings. I think when, someone cheats on you and you're in a romantic relationship with them, that's a huge psychic attack. I think you understand like how that just like ruins you, right? And ruins your sense of trust and stuff like this. That was an entity in control of them, because that's a huge windfall for all kinds of entities involved in that particular situation. If they can get someone to cheat on someone else, that's a lot of energy for them. So this person doubling down, no, I'm not under psychic attack. You're the entity, you're the evil one, this kind of thing. They kept wanting to do something that was bad for them, but they couldn't tell. So there was this level of stupidity, and confusion, and being in their mind, and then like whatever they felt, so they thought was true, because they didn't have enough wherewithal or a healthy sense of self and self-respect to just admit that maybe they were under psychic attack. So this person's shame was so big that when they were called out for being under psychic attack, their ego became really big and just denied it, And I'm sure you've dealt with people who just flatly deny the truth. And a lot of narcissists do this, right? Just flatly deny the truth. So a lot of people that we consider clinical narcissists are just walking, talking entities. They're definitely non-real people. They're not real people. They're just walking, talking entities, and everywhere they go is a path of destruction. This is something I alluded to in a previous video. You should just be able to evaluate people based on how they tell you who they are, like based on their behavior, based on what they say, based on your ability to shift them, if they're non-shiftable, if they just are argumentative, if they seem to bring everything down, if you try to tell them in a very calm manner stuff about, this violated me, and they just won't do it. They won't see your point of view. You're always wrong. They're always right. This type of stuff. Their consciousness is so low, it's really harmful for you to be in any kind of relationship with them. And this is really hard for people, because a lot of times these kinds of people who are just walking, talking entities are the people who raised them, are the people who gave birth to them, are the people that they married. And a lot of people choose not to acknowledge this. And instead of divorcing their husband at 27 years, because now they realize their husband is a non-real person and is limiting them on their spiritual path, rather than divorcing their husband and going on their spiritual path, they decide to give up their spiritual path and go with their husband and just keep the relationship alive. So I see so many people making the sacrifice. I would call this a blood sacrifice. Does it involve blood? Not quite, but it involves like your humanity. So you're killing your humanity in order to keep up a non-real relationship based on pretend, because you're pretending you don't see and feel things that you actually do. And then you have to lower your consciousness level to like not feel it. So maybe you're not addicted to drugs or alcohol, but what you're consciously doing, like with your vibration and your ability to be aware, is to like kind of cut your arm off, cut your nose off in order to not feel, so you can feel as little as your so-called husband feels, So you have like a non-real person in a relationship and a real person in a relationship, and that real person decides to become non-real in order to keep that relationship alive. This is very cowardly, you know. This is very cowardly. It's a kind of like self-mutilation. And when you really see it, it's really gross because someone is basically sacrificing their human selves. And, you know, the thing is, a lot of people don't trust enough. So, you know, now I'm going on a subject that has kind of like on the periphery of what is psychic attack, but basically there is some kind of relationship. Psychic attack changes how you think and feel. So the entities influence how you think and feel. So you might have a recurring thought, you know, it's really intrusive and you can't get it out of your head. Or you might have recurring images in your mind and you think you thought those images. Sometimes these cause shame. Sometimes these cause guilt. Sometimes these can make you think that you want to commit violence. You know, lots of people who are out of control, violent and schizophrenic. And I know that just because you're schizophrenic, that doesn't mean you're necessarily violent. But people who are really out of control in some kind of way and their mind is torturing them, and they have urges that are non-life affirming, oftentimes they're under horrific psychic attack. And by the way, when you do drugs and alcohol, you're ruining your aura. So you're making it easier and easier and easier for an entity to gain a hold of your body. So, you know, like, again, you're going to feel probably a really bad feeling. It's going to overcome you. It's going to come out of nowhere. There's going to be a lot of frustration, like maybe the grocery store clerk or the convenience store clerk just gets off on saying no and making up the rules like it's his fiefdom, you know? And then it just wastes an hour of your time, you trying to make a return that really you should be able to make, but like they refuse kind of thing. And then you're late for another appointment that was important to you. And then, you know, this kind of stuff. Psychic attack just drains you of your energy. And certain signs of psychic attack are you feel that feeling you're coming down with a cold, or you have bronchitis for like a month. You know, this is a good sign that your life force energy is being like permanently stolen from you by some kind of energy parasite. Whether the energy parasite lives in you or lives in the company that you work for, or lives in a family member that you haven't talked to in 10 years, but you're still energetically connected to, and they're stealing your life force energy even as we speak, you know? This you can't do anything about unless you trust. So intuition is the only way to recognize psychic attack and have some ability to come out of it. And intuition only happens when you've really worked on your shame. Intuition happens when you have an ability to not be in your mind. And this is almost no one in the Western world. Everyone's overthinking all the time. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go other than be in their minds, you know? Intuition is related to trust in the universe. It's really related to surrender. And I've talked about this in a previous video where I talk about like manifestation and stuff, and like surrender and intuition and trusting the universe are all very related. So if you have difficulty surrendering and you'd rather be in control, and that's the type of person who wants to be the hero at work or hero in the family, you know, they want to be needed all the time. That is you abusing your feminine, masculinizing your feminine, getting burnt out, and rather being some sort of martyr that feels like you have some sort of modicum of control, which is not true. You're like volunteering to be enslaved, where you're the slave of others, and especially of non-real people and entities. And you don't trust the universe, you don't trust your spiritual mission, and ultimately you won't trust yourself. Okay. We talked about psychic attack. That's enough for today. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.